and I'm going to open up the Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, April 4th. If you'd stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So before we get started, Nick, can you kind of just tell me everything that I have here? Like, we have the updated this, and then these go with that? These were also here.
Those are the other items on the agenda. I believe that's
1640.
Okay. And then what about this?
okay. So the big packet that I handed out, that's items 1 through 8. We sent out the electronic link. Carrie sent out in advance of the meeting was running. This is a copy to replace items 1 through 8 in your binder.
Okay.
That table of contents, I provided that with most of the public. Have a clear idea of which sections are being amended, and which ones are going to change. We had provided this previously, but I just updated it because some of the headings changed a little bit, and I wanted that to be available for reference.
Okay.
And then finally, before you have the preliminary public comment matrix that we've compiled to date. So these are all of the public comments that we've received to date, though the public comment period on Title 20 does not end until April 18th.
Okay.
So any comments that we receive tonight or subsequent to tonight's meeting prior to the deadline, we will add the matrix, and we're going to provide the planning commission at the next meeting a response to explain what the comment was and what we've done to address that comment, if anything, and where that change should be found. And so that should make it easier for you to sort through the testimony that's been received and make your recommendation according to the schedule that we've set out for full adoption.
So are you going to make the changes within the document, and then we're going to see it?
Correct. So
Are you going to
the
put?
binder that you have tonight, that's just the most up-to-date version of things.
Okay.
Any changes that we make between now and the next meeting will be shown in spread through so that you'll be able to find them because they're in red and underlined, and that'll make it easy to identify the amendments.
Okay. And are these comments going to be within this, like under like a little comment box, or no?
No, the comment is just, it's a
Okay.
greater context for any change that may have occurred, or it's going to show you what comments were received in the event that nothing was changed. It'll have an explanation of why nothing was changed in
Okay.
response to a particular comment.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So, and before you open the public hearing, I just want to make sure that, for members of the public, it's really helpful to have, specific comments about specific sections of code. You know, we like, when there are specific suggestions, those are things that we can respond to and consider. If it's general, such as I'm in favor or I'm against something, it certainly goes down in the record, but it's not something that we can, use as much to try to improve the proposed unified development code. And of course, we're happy to take additional comments between now and the deadline on April 18th. So
Okay.
that said, I think you can open the public hearing, and then after the public hearing is closed, I'm happy to take any questions that you have about this, though we're planning on having you deliberate on this at your meeting in May.
Okay, so, first of all, we'll do number 2, audience comments not on the agenda. Seeing none, we'll move on to number 3, business items. A, public hearing, draft Title 20, land use and development regulations. At this time, I will open up the public hearing. Is there any comments?
For the record, my name is William M. Palmer, and I'm here tonight representing the Kitsap Alliance of Property Owners Organization. And I have some general comments, some questions, and some questions I want to pose to the commission. My first question is noting that there is a difference between green, purple, and blue on the new Port Orchard Municipal Code Title 20. I'm wondering why I can't get access to certain things that, particularly those that are in blue to be updated later, but even some of the purple. I'll get to that in a moment, but one example is Chapter 20.54. Now, I did participate in the quote stakeholders group and made most all of the meetings. Was very surprised that that process terminated before the committee could even make a recommendation. But I'm even more surprised when I look at the comment sheet that none of the comments that came out in that committee seem to be reflected in the comment sheet, and I'm wondering why. That's a couple of my questions that have to do with process and information that's available to the public. But one other information that seems to be missing is that I read in the work study material that the city attorney was providing information relative to sections of the code, but I couldn't find any document produced by the city attorney relative to those code provisions. So maybe they exist, I assume they do, but I couldn't even find when I went on your website that there was an agenda for this meeting, but Carrie did send out a notice, so I knew about it. And of course, I know that you meet on the first Tuesday of every month, so that's no surprise, but not finding an agenda on the website was an interesting experience, and not finding all the documents on the website, like 2054 having to do with non-conforming uses. But there's a few other things missing. And it appears that most of the comments in your comment spreadsheet reflect the critical areas ordinance provisions. And although I have a copy of Port Orchard's critical areas ordinance in my office, I don't have any of the proposed changes that the city's going to make. And I'm wondering if I'm the only one, or whether that's generally true for others as well. Now, I'm going to highlight one concern of many, and I wasn't the only one in the stakeholders group that raised this issue, and it's found in Title 20.22020. It's on page 2 of that sheet. Has to do with permit review type classifications. And I just want you to, if you can follow along, go over to the left-hand column.
Okay, I'm way behind you.
Can you tell me where what you're looking at?
It's in generally chapter 20.20, but in this case it's 20.22, titled Permit and Development Approval Permit Process Types. Okay, and on page 2 of that, it's a little chart. And I have type 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But in type 1, just want you to focus on this one thing, is that Building permit applications, if you object to them, guess where you go? Superior Court. I help quite a few individuals, more so in the county than in the city, process building permit applications. And more than one of my clients, because I'm also a land use planning consultant, more than one of my clients has reason to object to the application of code to their particular permit. Now, why do they have to go to court? Yeah, normally in the building code, best of my recollection, there's supposed to be a specific appeals body that building code related and building permit applications go to, and not to Superior Court. But that's just an example of things that are in your code that we talked about and saw no reason to, apparently staff or whoever put this code together saw no reason to make any changes. And I wasn't the only one that brought that one up either. And I did note that I had made comment about a number of things in the various sections of the code, and none of those changes are reflected in your current document that I can discern, and I do apologize. I have not had a chance to go through 150 pages in light of my other responsibilities, but you're tasked with that job. So I want to encourage the commission to ask at least 4 questions as you're reviewing each of these proposed changes to your code. These are the 4 questions I'd like you to ask. Who benefits by the regulation? Question number 1. Question number 2, what problem is the regulation designed to solve? Question number 3, why are not the existing regulations working to solve that problem? And number 4, what is the minimum action the city can take to solve the problem? Now, I've watched code development, participated in the process at practically every opportunity I could for well over 35 years here in Kitsap County, including the city of Port Orchard and Bremerton. Haven't done too much in Paulsbo, but I've had projects up there. I've watched code after code get adopted by various agencies within the county. Nobody, absolutely not one of those jurisdictions ever said what the problem was the regulations they were crafting were designed to solve. Now, I did participate as best I could in your 2015-2016 process. And in 2015, August of that year, your then city attorney advised the city council that you had a problem that was likely to result in lawsuits for the city. Public didn't know what the problem was. Even appeared later on in November before this body asking what the problem was, and the Planning Commission couldn't tell us. I'm not the only one that was there that night. So apparently there is a problem with your subdivision code and perhaps some of your other development code related. Now, as I recall what happened in the fall of 2015, the city council adopted the interim emergency ordinance for a period of 6 months. That was later extended in January for another 9 months that went into a year plus. And the focus of that whole emergency ordinance was around the subdivision code. So suddenly the subdivision code consideration got mixed in with the zoning ordinance and the stormwater regulations, and the process grew, the process of code consideration grew very substantially. I'm wondering, which is my last question, does this body have enough time to go through not just the 150 to 200 pages in this book here, but all the other codes that are supposed to be enveloped into your development code? I submit that's a daunting challenge to do in 2 months. The working committee, the stakeholders group, we met over a period of 6 to 8 months. In my opinion, we didn't come to any particular conclusion except that some of the regulations went way overboard than what they needed to. And now they dumped it in your lap as a continuation process and expect you to go through what the committee went through, kind of in a step-by-step process in a period. Your task is started in January, and you have 3 months to do what the committee couldn't do in 9 months. So good luck, but I hope you will take serious the questions that I pose to you as you're reviewing each individual regulation, and I'll do my best to submit additional comments in writing. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, my name is Richard Brown. I'm a 78-year resident of Port Orchard itself. I lived on Pottery Hill, you call Holt Street. And I've only cared about one thing in the last 48 years, and that's make sure the citizens in this city and Kitsap County got a fair break in planning. For 15 years or so, I represented the real estate industry. I'm a builder, I'm a developer, and I love this city. And there's only one concern I have, is the Planning Commission and the City Council love it the same that I do. My opinion, you're here to represent the citizens, not some broken plan that has been given to you. I sat in a few meetings of what Bill Palmer's talking about. I also sat on every plan that's ever been before the city, and I don't like this plan. It is not like we did the sub-area plan, where the citizens decided what went on, not some attorney that was fired and then turned around and tried to justify her work. It isn't working. And so we have all kinds of people sitting around the table that know what they're doing, and they can't agree with the city. If they agree with the city, small changes are made, but the problem is the big changes are still there. I want to ask you a question. If you had a boundary line adjustment, this city was developed in 1897 by the Klein family who lived on Pottery Hill, by Sidney, which was John Ensley, who owned Peninsula Feed's uncle. That's where you get to Sidney developments. And he was from New York, back east, and he went and came. They said how much they wanted for the hillsides around here, and he went back and he earned the money, he came back, and he developed Sidney, most of this town. Well, in those days, everything was done on paper. So consequently, a lot of the property lines are not where they should be, especially when you go over to Gorst and down that way. It's terrible. So now we're going to do a boundary line adjustment ordinance. And I've been told, well, Larry, this used to be done before. When we took boundary line adjustments to Larry Curls, Larry would look at them, see that there was a stamp on it, give it back to us, and that's all there was. We were trying to solve property line problems because the guy put the fence up so many years ago. If you don't want to go to court, you try to solve it, right? You and your neighbor. Well, this ordinance, I think it's 258 or whatever. It's 2084. This ordinance changes the game. Some of you know Dick Berg. He lived over on the hill over here. I don't know. He spent 120 days, 6 months trying to get his done. So we have licensed surveying go to unexperienced clerk, telling them this is what it should be. And they're looking at a piece of paper and saying, well, we don't like this. Well, they don't have a surveying license. The guy like Reed Muller, Olson's Group, all kinds of different surveyors here in town. We don't need a complicated ordinance to solve simplistic problems. I wanted to go over one other thing. Bill mentioned the non-conforming use. In 1939, my mom and dad owned a grocery store on Pottery Hill, and so did the Sladek family, Mendel on Sydney. And they were all little stores in the neighborhoods because people didn't drive to get their food. So now we're going to make anything that's left over that doesn't fit Nick's plan into non-conforming uses that will have to be made conforming sooner or later, especially when you remodel. I don't know if you've noticed like I have recently, but this town is being rebuilt. Old houses are being torn down. New houses are going up. We're using every square inch of Port Orchard. And we need to make sure when we do that, that kids don't have to play in the streets like Phil Corliss and the Eklund family. We played in the streets on Pottery Hill. And now we have kids up off of Sydney playing in the streets because there's not 1 inch of property left over when they put the house on a 3,500 square foot lots. The cars are parked in the street, the garages are full of their goods, and the kids are playing in the street because there are no yards. One of the questions I put to the city council recently, is that what we want? Is that what we want as citizens? Do we want 3,500 square foot lots? Or do we want 7,500 square foot lots? Somewhere to park your car and for kids to play. Now, the government seems to feel that they know better than the citizens who run this city. I don't believe they do. And isn't it a shame? This place is empty. You sat on the Comprehensive Plan Committee with me, didn't you? Mm-hmm. The audience was full. There's not a person here. I found out from Mike and Bill that this meeting was tonight. This place should be filled if they were properly notified and put out things so they could see it. They would be here. I don't think they're getting the information because we're changing their lives. And I would just hope that you take your time, do what you think is right, and hope we can all live here later. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no, did you want to make any other comments before I close it?
No, I'll make comments in writing.
Okay. Seeing no other audience members, I'm going to close the public hearing for draft Title 20. Nick, do you want to say anything?
I'm happy to answer any questions that planning commissioners have at this time, but there are no questions. We can move on to the next agenda items. And we will we'll try to summarize the comments that have been received and provide a response to them where a response is appropriate. Likewise with any written comments that are received between now and the deadline.
Now that I think about it, I do have a Bill Palmer again, William M. Palmer. The question is, I saw a staff report relative to the stormwater regulations the state had us adopt, had everybody adopt at the end of last year. But I saw no staff report for the rest of the development code issues, and I just wondered if there was one and if it was available somewhere where I could find it.
Can you answer that?
Yes, do you want to close the hearing
I did,
first?
I
You did
closed
already?
it already.
So we actually started discussing many of these code updates back in September of 15. And then concurrently, as the development committee worked on things, we brought items before the planning commission for study. And so there have been staff reports when we brought those items forward over the past 6 or 8 months. In this case, because this was only taking public testimony, a staff report outlining all of the specifics of this update was not provided tonight, but we will be providing a staff report once we begin deliberations, specifically addressing the comments that we received.
Point of order, William M. Palmer again. I guess I must be in the confused category because I'm accustomed in other ordinance and comprehensive plan situations that when I go to testify that I have the benefit of not only the plan or the ordinance that's before the commission or city council, but I also have the benefit of the staff analysis. And then I can, when I testify, I can choose to disagree with staff or pose questions to staff relative to their analysis. Anyway, I just didn't, I find it odd. Thanks.
For the record, Richard Brown, I would make a recommendation to you. When staff makes changes at your direction, or changes have been made, like the group that had been meeting, trying to work this thing out, that those changes that you recommend be put in red. So we had a previous ordinance that needed maybe a little fixing, but then we went into emergency situations, forced into that, but the city council was forced into it by a threat of a lawsuit. I mean, how many, what is there, 7,000 of us now, and one guy threatens to sue, so we go into spastic mode. What I'd like you to do is recommendations from that group have been made. I would like to see you see them. I would also like you to see the former ordinance, what was wrong with it, like Bill had indicated earlier. If there was nothing wrong with it, why are we changing it? And the changes that you recommend so that you have the full picture in front of you as you go through this thing. It's tough on Nick and staff, I realize that. But you should know where we've been and where we're going. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick, I do have a question similar to what he just said. I remember meeting with the city council down here, and I asked that question when we were going to have the changes, that they be struck through and then the new ones added in so we kind of could follow along. And I don't see that.
So I think the purpose of the table of contents that is color-coded that we handed out, anything that's in purple is a total rewrite of the existing code. And so it is replacing existing code sections. We previously provided copies of the sections being repealed, but those are being replaced in their entirety. There are very few sections that are being just amended at this time. I would also add that moving from the day that we launched the public comment period and put the draft Title 20 online, any changes that have been made to the document since then are in strike-through and underline so that you can track the progress that is made for the total change out of each of these sections, and you can see where things have been tweaked or corrected or amended as a result of the testimony or comments that we've received as we've studied or as we've gotten comments from other groups or agencies.
So why don't we have that like in front of us that says that? So if you, on chapter 20.02, it has that is updated information, but what's the old information? I guess that's what I wanted to see too. I wanted to see it side by side so I knew what we were changing from. And I don't know did we get one of these prior to tonight? Did we get one when we originally got the notebook that was simply something similar to this that showed the changes? I just want to know, did I miss something somewhere? Or does anybody else remember seeing this when we first got this book?
We had a summary, but it didn't have any color codes.
No color code.
Yeah.
And see, I kind of feel like we're in the dark. And then we've been going off of this white binder book, and then we get here tonight, and we have this. And it's like, I'm kind of confused, and I kind of feel sideswiped in a way that, maybe that's just me.
Yeah, so in the book that you got tonight, as you look through that, and it was provided electronically as well, I believe, by Terry, the only changes are in the strike through and underline. So where you see something underlined in red, that's something that is since the last time that you saw it.
The new one, has been updated since the last time we saw this one. But this one, the white binder, is what we've been working out of. And so what's in red now has been updated from what? From our meeting, or from public comment, or from things you got in the mail? What is the red?
It's all of the above. It's changes that have been made since the beginning of the conversation.
So what I would like to know is when we received the white binder, what was new in that? So when I'm at work, we do policy and procedure all the time, and it's like, Joe Brown said blah, 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 and it's crossed out with the new wording. So we know what Joe Brown said now and what he said later, and I guess that's kind of what I wanted to see is, what are we changing? I mean, we could go through and say, oh, this is great, and everything. And then I also asked who was on the stakeholders committee. And now from what you just said, you guys didn't finish the process?
Well, that was my opinion, but apparently the process, it just ended.
Well, and the mayor appointed members to the stakeholder committee, and Mr. Palmer and Mr. Brown attended those meetings, but they were not official members as appointed by the mayor.
Okay,
And so they were involved in the process, and we let them sit at the table to provide their input.
okay.
But he was trying to put together a group that represented different interests and to constructively review the documents. And I think ultimately he chose about 8 people, including a city council person. And Mark, you were on the committee, correct, Mr. Chair?
No.
So,
Nick on it?
just 1 second. So did they go from a start to finish through the whole book? That's what I want to know.
They went through the entire subdivision code, the SEPA chapter, and the permit processing chapters. They did not go through the other updates that the attorney provided, because that wasn't part of the interim ordinance, that was part of, that just wasn't the direction from the mayor to go through those sections.
But those sections in here are changed?
Correct. And I will say that I think the group definitely attended towards the end of the group. We started losing members and having fewer and fewer people show up. And so I think the mayor just kind of stopped calling for additional meetings.
Okay. Do you have a question, or what?
I was asked to participate in that group by Councilman Lucarelli. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have been there. And what Nick said about participation, it did wane, and that may have been why the mayor terminated the group, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I think in all the meetings that were held, I missed maybe 2, but 1 for sure.
Okay.
Otherwise, I was there.
All right, thank you. So, does anybody have any other questions for Nick on the item A, the draft Title 20?
Well, I guess, I have kind of the same feelings that you do, and that is, I mean, we don't know where the baseline is and where that baseline, at the beginning of the process, when was the beginning of the process? And what did it look like at the beginning of the process? And what was that date of that beginning of that process? And what has changed that we have not already voted on or discussed? What has changed since that beginning date to the date of today, or whatever we're looking at in this large stack of information? And I think that's what you're talking about, is things that could have been changed prior to the comment period. We don't
Right, we don't know. We don't know what that is.
Is that something that we can know or should know, or Nick? I mean,
I think that if you look back at your planning commission agendas, going back, every chapter that is in purple on this sheet was provided to you as a new document for study in previous meetings. And so,
and have we voted on some of those? We have not. Okay.
it was only presented to you as this is a new chapter, here's your opportunity to ask questions.
Okay.
Kind of, took a high level walk through what is there, but I think the expectation was that if you needed clarification on any of those sections, that was the time to really try to understand those documents in advance of taking public testimony.
Okay.
So tonight was really to get public testimony on what was provided in February when we released the clean copy of the proposed Unified Development Code, which is a new code. I mean, from front to back, it's new because, and some of the language is recycled from the old code, but it's been moved. But we've walked you through all of the sections that have changed over the past 3 months. And with SEPA and the conditional use permits and variances chapter, some of those were in December and others were in the fall prior to the start of the development committee when we put, the planning commission actually did vote on the SEPA chapter, and then we decided to put that on hold and integrate it with the other changes because there were too many things moving forward separately and consolidated to make it one comprehensive amendment as opposed to a bunch of small amendments where we're trying to renumber things and move things around and all the cross-referencing is
So I guess what you're saying is nothing has changed that we haven't discussed.
correct.
Okay.
Correct. And if anything has changed, well, and I don't want to say nothing has changed. If anything has changed, it's in strike through and underlined in the copy that was sent out via email and printed for you tonight, and you would see those red lines. There's not many of them. They're not few and far between at this point, but there may be more between now and the next meeting based on the comments that we received and the legal advice we received as a result of talking to the attorney about those comments.
And before we make a vote, one way or the other, there's going to be a staff report that discusses changes and comments.
Correct. There will be the matrix I would expect is going to get significantly longer based on the comments that are received. In addition to just listing the comments, we're going to have another column that shows action taken, and it'll reference the section that was amended as a result of that comment so that you can go through all of the comments and see what was and wasn't addressed and why. And that's really to go from the baseline in February to the finish line in May. And if you need further explanation of the sections of code that are being repealed, I'm happy to revisit that as part of our deliberation. But that was presented, I think, pretty early on.
Okay, and you can understand what we're looking at this going,
And
what that? But as long as I think what I would like to see in the staff report before we vote on the changes to the Title 20 is a little backtrack on what we have done and have looked at in prior planning commission meetings. You understand what I'm saying? Just kind of a refresher on what we
I
Yes.
think what I can do is, using this table of contents, I think that the sections that are replacing old chapters, I can provide that notation, and I can also provide a reference to when this was presented, and kind of keep it as a high-level outline, because I think it's very difficult to summarize this in a staff report without producing, a 40, 50, 60-page staff report to
understand.
explain 150 pages of code.
Correct. Okay, yeah, just as long as we get a little bit of that we have discussed it and we did, because if we discussed it and we were comfortable with discussing it at the time that we discussed it, then I don't think there's any need to rehash that again. But just to make sure that we know that this was discussed at this planning commission meeting on this date.
Understood.
I agree that we did discuss this, but did we know what was being changed? Even though, because it says updated new, like chapter in purple, updated new June of 2017. Oh, we haven't got there yet.
I think, so when I
But-
updated this document tonight, it was from a January document, and I believe the January document actually listed which section each of these was replacing. But I will provide that, and I will also provide copies of the code that is being repealed, indicating that this is, these are the sections that are being repealed in conjunction with this action.
So moving forward, with anything else that we get that is in writing today, when there is a change, can we have the, the original wording, then with the strike through and the new wording next to it? That's what I want to see.
I think that's.
Because we used to get that.
I mean, it's possible to do that, but you're gonna have 40 pages of strike-through next to 40 pages of new text. And so I think it's really difficult for you to line them up side by side, because it's not like, there aren't section by section. The format doesn't even match from new to old to where you can make that sort of comparison.
I wouldn't think it'd be side by side. I would think it'd be underneath of it, because you'd be striking out, what was said, and then underneath is all the new wording. You just read it like a book.
Yeah, it's possible, but I think the amount of work that goes into it and the usability of it, because of the volume of strike-through next to the volume of new text, it's not like you make one paragraph, delete it, and then insert the new paragraph that replaces it, because the formatting and the structure of the code is totally different. It's gonna be, here's the new subdivision code, and here's the old subdivision code, and, this is 6 pages of strike-through and 40 pages of new text.
Seems daunting.
And I thought some of the major changes that we received were in those manila envelopes, or we downloaded them and then had the read through it to show us. That's what I saw. Is that?
Okay. Any other questions? Moving on. Public hearing, number B, or letter B, public hearing, proposed changes to chapter 16.40 R8 zoning. So at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing for that. Anybody have comments?
William M. Palmer, for the record. Not prepared to testify because apparently I didn't spend enough time on the city's website to find the changes to the R8 zone. And I did find the home business section, but I didn't find the R8. If I missed it, I'll have to address that in written comments later, but I still go back to my question is, why are we making the change in the first place? I don't know, because I haven't seen it, but maybe there's a logical answer.
Thank you. You have any comments? No? I don't know what it is either. Okay. So at this time, seeing no other audience members, I will close the public.
You would actually leave it open and let me talk about this so that they have an opportunity
Sure.
to ask questions.
Yeah, that would be great.
If they If you remember, back in November, we started a discussion so they would like